Good evening. Welcome to another program of the International Grapevine. Tonight in International Grapevine, we want to talk about the advancement and progress that China has made all over Latin America. The reality of the matter is that they have penetrated Costa Rica, Panama, the Dominican Republic, and all of South America. But today's program, we want to talk about the presence of China in Panama. More importantly, all some of the amount of infrastructure that they have done in Panama and why. It's important to note that actually they penetrated Panama in 2013 when President Varela gave them the opportunity to come in, and he was no longer intending in doing business with Taiwan. However, all of that has changed in 2019, where the new president Cortizo came in and did some changes. But we'll get to that. We want to take this opportunity when we talk about the presence of China in Panama, our special guest, who has been on our program many times, and we more than thrilled and happy to have him on our program. We're talking about Mr. Louis Marshall, adjunct professor of criminal justice from the University of Staya in Georgia. Mr. Mr. Louis Marshall, welcome to our program. It's been a long time, and we're looking forward to work with you as a Panamanian American that you know everything that goes on out there. And we feel very pleased to have you as a special guest in this program today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Good. Well, let's start a little bit from the beginning. It's very clear that Panama owns the canal and control all of the canal. When was the canal passed over to Panama by the American government?
Okay, this all began October the 1st, 1979, whereas the Canal Zone, which is the territory, uh, ceased to exist under the United States. And the actual turning over of the canal, that agreement was signed uh, at the same time. However, it will not go into effect until December the 31st, 1999. Both treaties were signed on September the 7th, 1977. That's when they actually signed it. But it did not go into effect as far as the canal until December the 31st, 1999.
So it's safe to say that, without any doubt, that Panama is in full control of the canal now that it was turned over back in 1999. So they are running the entire canal, and they are the owner of the canal. Are there any agreement with the Americans that if something was to happen, the USA is always standing pat, or would they support Panama in any way?
Yes, in the contract that was signed, the Torrijos Carter contract, which was signed September 7, 1977, one of the agreements in that contract, it's about the second to last page, clearly indicates that if anything threatens that canal, and when I say anything, it means the United States reserve the right to determine what is considered a threat, which is very unique because they can uh, come up with a supposition as to something that they feel is not comfortable. Therefore, they have a need to intervene into Panama to supposedly protect the canal at that juncture. But yes, they have the right to intervene for the safety of the Panama Canal.
That's good to know. That means they have a strong backing if something was to happen or go down. Is the Panama Canal an international political and economic concern in any way?
Well, when you look at the Panama Canal, it remains an international logistic hub. Remember, many of the Chinese that are in Panama currently, you're talking about going back to the building of the railroad. I don't know if you want to reflect from that point. So China is not new to Panama. They arrived there during the time of the building of the railroad in 1850. In fact, right now as we speak, 35% of Panamanians um, are of Chinese ancestry. 35% of the population. So again, answering the primary part of the question, it is an international hub and it's logistic and strategic in terms of getting to the vantage point from Atlantic to Pacific Ocean in the fastest time possibly by the ocean, by ocean. There's nowhere else you can use that analogy and say to go from Atlantic to Pacific versus what is now the Panama Canal that provides that quick ability to transfer from one side of the ocean, Pacific to Atlantic, or vice versa. There's no other point where you can do that other than going down to Cape Horns, which is about another uh, 2 months transit to get down to that point and come back up on the other side to either Atlantic or Pacific Ocean.
Very interesting indeed. Very interesting indeed. Make no question about it that the canal is a beautiful thing. It's one of the most attractive beauties in entire America, and ships go in and come out. And the canal plays a very, very important part, as you mentioned, in the Pacific side, the Atlantic side, and the amount of boats that come and load there. Let's talk a little bit about when the COVID was around. Was there concern while the COVID created a stampede of boats that could not enter into the canal? They had to wait for because the canal was so packed. What impact did that have on the canal, and what was the outright result of that over a period of time? Did they have to wait for the COVID to finish? Because I mean, when COVID hit the United States, it hit Panama, it hit Central America, it hit the entire world, so to speak, and it affected a lot of business. And obviously, it did affect the Panama Canal somewhat.
Okay, and when it affected the canal, at the same time, what happened? Uh, the Chinese took advantage of the opportunity to offer support in terms of the vaccine and so forth dealing with COVID. Uh, I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of over 2 million in assistance during that period of time to help Panama. And this gave them a more direct entry point in terms of confidence with the country of Panama. And yes, the COVID pandemic caused some serious delay, and Panama economy was one of the first and hardest hit in the region by COVID, contracting by 17.9% in 2020, furthering its vulnerability to Chinese advances. Chinese took advantage of that and realized that Panama is now in a choking point financially and logistically. So therefore, they introduced themselves as an aid to help in resolving the pandemic situation to some extent.
When you say they were helpful in turn with the vaccination, or some of the vaccination came from America, most of the vaccination came from China.
Most of the vaccination, to my knowledge, came from America, and it's clear that America was playing a primary part in bringing things back to fruition, even though there was a delay, but yet still Russia offered their assistance and Panama accepted it. So you had the two superpowers reaching out at the same time, trying to uh, help in the circumstance that existed. But Pfizer Corporation, to my knowledge, was probably the largest entity in helping with the vaccine. And I have somebody who personally, a friend of mine, that was involved in part of the contractual agreement because initially there was a slight scandal in Panama about selling the vaccine, and Pfizer became somewhat concerned. And a friend of mine who is directly involved, he has his own studio in Texas, and one of the heads of Pfizer have a family member who attends that studio. It's a karate studio, and he had the advantage to speak to that person directly. And they said they will resume sending the vaccine. And he spoke to me, and what I did for him was I wrote a letter clearly outlining under what circumstance the vaccine will arrive and requesting a signature of the recipient, and clearly I put in the letter how the distribution should be done, and signatures must be accounted for in every direction, whether it went to Cologne or any of the provinces. Somebody have to sign off. So there was much more accountability with the second go round of Pfizer vaccination sent to Panama.
That's good to know. Obviously, it saves a lot of lives and made things go back to somewhat to a natural situation. So it's safe to say now the canal is running safely. No backup of boats and stuff like that. Everything's flowing like it ought to be.
No, unfortunately, as we speak, because of the climate, the water table is extremely low. What that means is for certain size vessels to transit the Panama Canal, the water table has to be at a certain level. Because remember, you're going from fresh water to salt water in either direction. So therefore, that water table have to be high enough, whereas it can buoy a large ship. You know, you're talking about these tremendous vessels, especially the Panamax. So what has happened as we speak right now, there's close to 200 ships that are backed up, waiting to go through the canal. Uh, I got some information recently that was a little surprising to me. A particular ship paid 1.2 million to jump ahead of the line to
Wow.
transit. And I have to believe that they must have been carrying a cargo that has a timetable as far as durability. Whatever they were carrying, obviously they needed a timetable to get to their next destination. So I think the only way you'll pay that kind of money if all your goods are in jeopardy.
So it's safe to say that they must have had some goods in jeopardy. One, but the backed up of the situation with the water affect the economy because a lot of boat goes through Panama on a daily basis. No if, ands, or boat, but about it, loading and unloading and bringing merchandise. So it must have slowed part of the economy, not only in Panama, but other part of the country, wouldn't you say?
Well, not entirely, because remember some of these cargo ships are moving their cargo from one side of the ocean to the other without really addressing the needs of Panama. It depends on what the cargo consists of. Now you have another section of cargo that deals with what is going to be left in Panama for the country's distribution, and also the ones that are going to be placed in warehouses that are going to be distributed abroad through other transportation means. So I don't think it affected Panama. It has affected Panama severely as we speak right now. But yes, it does make a difference because as we speak, there's also groups of people trying to explore other avenues because they figure this can happen again. And how many times can you accept this and deal with the delay that is taking place right now?
So it's safe to say that they might be doing their own investigation to have a plan B in case something like that happen again. Uh,
Yes, there quietly there've been some investigation going on by different sources, including even the Chinese. But the Chinese wisely is not publicizing anything arbitrary about this because they're still at the behest of Panama and they want to be in good grace with Panama. So they're not saying that we are looking for any alternative, but you know, it is clear that if this is going to happen again, Mother Nature dictates when this is going to happen, and you cannot move the ships accordingly. And China is the second highest volume of transportation beside the United States. They are obviously going to have to start thinking, how can we make this remedy in the future, even if we do it on a temporary basis? So yes, there's some consideration as far as how to confront this situation in the future.
They have to. Is the USA still a big user of the Panama Canal? We understand that 60% of American cargo enter through the canal, and China have approximately 14% of cargoes coming through. So America continue to be a big user of the Panama Canal, wouldn't you say?
Yes. Well, remember now, when we consider the Panama Canal a commodity rise, um, it but the United States export and import with containers presents about 73% of the Panama Canal traffic. 73% the United States
Wow.
is part of. And at the same time, uh, they have approximately 40% of all US containers traffic through the Panama Canal every year. So you have the volume of containers that going to go through and probably deposit certain things in warehouses in Panama. And then you have that 73% traffic including containers and some without large containers that also transit the Panama Canal. So the cargo adds up to somewhere around $270 billion in cargo annually. When you're talking
Wow.
dollars now, 270
Wow.
billion.
Well, like I said, China has made it a business to penetrate Panama to do business, and I'm sure America is very well aware of that, and they always keep their eyes open because the truth of the matter is that America built a canal and they use a canal for bring cargo, take cargo out, and stuff like that.
Right.
Let's talk about one of the most important things. We know that in 2016, we know Panama entered a $900 million deal with China with a group by the name of Land Bridge to
Land Bridge
acquire
Group.
control of the Margarita Island and to do certain amount of infrastructure in part of Panama and close to the canal. How is that coming along?
Well, the deal was made, as you said, and it bears repeating. It's called Land Bridge Group Purchase of Panama's largest port, deep water port, located at Margaritas Island. That was done, as you said, May 25th, 2016, for a total of 900 million. The port lies on the Atlantic entrance to the Panama Canal, which is the side of the city of Colón, within the Colón Free Zone. So, yes, that deal was completed accordingly.
Did they control the Margarita Island also that is close to Cologne?
Well, unfortunately, you'll have to say they control it. If you invest that much money, it gives you free reign to make the decisions that are going to be taking place in that place and area, because now you don't use the word ownership, but the fact that they pay that much money, even though it's still in the Republic of Panama in the territory itself, they have bought the rights. Again, just like we had the Canal Zone, they have bought the rights now to control that segment of the country.
Very interesting indeed. Well, like I said, we started a conversation talking about Varela when he was president, that he allowed to do business with Panama. Did the Chinese also create the new rail that is in Panama, which I understand is a great successful thing? And they also built a lot of infrastructures in Panama. What can you share to us about that, the rail and the structures at a certain part of Panama?
Well, the rails were completed, and it wasn't solely the Chinese vested interest. The Chinese was looking forward to the primary rail that was going to go from Panama to Darien. Those are
Mhm.
the super trains, not the current ones that exist in Panama. Those are the common ones that you see in mainly Latin America and so. But the super speed trains, I think approximately from Panama City to Darien, you probably could do there in an hour. That never came to pass for various reasons. Um, the United States had some meetings with the Republic of Panama, the government, in reference to allowing such a thing to happen by the Chinese, along with the other ventures that you mentioned. And many of those ventures did not come to pass because you have a combination of when the COVID came along, and then you have the new administration. And under the new administration, uh, Panama has refused to go forward with a lot of the plans that were on the drawing board. Nito Cortizo have not been amenable to go along with all of these plans.
It's interesting to mention that when we get back on the international grapevine, we're going to take a smaller recess. We want to talk about the Cortizo, the way how he felt. He did a certain amount of investigation, and also to understand the picture that China has played in Panama and whether they did all the job that they agreed to do. We'll be right back on the international grapevine as we continue talking about the presence of China in Panama. Trade between China and Latin America and the Caribbean experienced dramatic growth since the early 2000s. Going forward, China is poised to solidify its position as a leading regional trading partner. By 2035, trade values will likely reach unprecedented levels. This, accompanied by greater Chinese investment and financial flows, will further increase China's economic importance for the Latin American countries, with potential implications for prosperity and geological region and beyond all addition. Despite China's rise, the United States remain top trading partner through 2035 for Panama and other Latin countries. No question about it. And we're back here in International Grapevine talking about the presence of China in Panama. China is not only in Panama, they're in Argentina, they're in Costa Rica, Nicaragua. For some reason, they have invested a lot in a Latin country. They have made a lot of roads and stuff like that. And sometimes we wonder about their interests, and I'm quite sure America has their eyes and ears open with these type of things and that is going on. And we today want to talk about whatever progress they have made in the restructure certain things of Panama, how it's gone down, and what the Panamanian people feel about the various investment that their country have done with them. Originally, President Varela is the one who brought them in, but it's my understanding that the president that took place, Laurentino Cortizo, back in 2019, put a stop on a lot of projects that China was doing because he felt that not all of the projects was completed properly. So we want to take this opportunity to talk to Mr. Marshall a little bit about that. How did you feel, or what is your understanding when President Cortizo came and basically stopped certain some of the projects that the China done? They feel that not all of the project was done on time, or some of them was done too fast, and he just kind of put it on hold for a while. Where do we go from here, and what is perspective of something like that?
Okay, as things unfolded during the new administration by Laurentino Cortizo, President of the Republic of Panama, one of the first initiatives that he took on was scaling back the Chinese projects under it that were left from the Varela administration. And part of it, I will believe that it was the interaction with the United States, cautioning them about the long-term plans of China in the Republic of Panama. So what he did was scale back quite a few of the projects, and what he tried to emphasize was to continue to keep an open relationship with the United States as global entry international trusted traveler status, which means the United States and Panama will maintain that close interaction, minus the Chinese interfering where the United States become concerned and now put pressure on Panama in terms of their relationship and interaction. So the key was to maintain that. It's called the international trusted travel status. Uh, so the United States can continue now taking the lead in the geopolitical competition surrounding the Panama Canal. That was the key, to make sure that they are the ones established with that geopolitical competition.
It's important that you mentioned that, and I think that a new president was right to do that. And I think
Yes.
America should be concerned of the amount of penetration that China have done over a lot of Latin country all over the world. And I'm sure the USA will keep an eye open. What was China's reaction when the president of Panama kind of slowed things down and cut back and went to them and said, we're not going to do this. You need to fix this first. And you get what was their overall reaction?
Well, in general, I'll say that their reaction was not too not outbursts. It was more maintaining a wise calm approach, because keeping in mind, while this is happening, the Chinese infrastructure in the Panama Canal has currently two ports in Panama. So you don't want to damage any more the relationship that already exists. It's called the Hutchison Port,
Yes.
Hutchison, the Hutchison Port. It's a subsidiary company out of Hong Kong, and the two ports that I'm talking about, one is Balboa and one is Cristobal. Those are the two ports that China currently are directly involving in Panama. So it was not wise for them to create any outburst animosity in Panama at the time.
How does the Panamanian people or nation feel of the big presence of China in Panama? Considering the things them that China penetrated, like I said, Costa Rica, La República Dominicana, El Salvador, Guatemala, and all those type of places. As a matter of fact, there are certain places. My understanding is that China has built a small little military in certain Latin country. How does the Panamanian people feel about the presence of China in their nation?
Well, I have not seen a lot of reaction by the population itself in a large on a large scale. The only time I seen a large reaction was when the Chinese arrived to help build the railroad. Uh, not the one we're talking about 1850. I'm talking about the train that is running currently. When they arrived there with an entourage of Chinese laborers, and Panamanian reacted to that like, wait a minute, you get a contract to build something in our country and you providing the workforce. What does that do for us? We're going to owe you the money for this venture, but we don't participate in any sense as administrators, and we're not part of the workforce. What is our role in all of this? So even though Panama reacted in that manner, it's ironic that at the end of the day, I don't know if you mind that I kind of get ahead now and mention something that transpired right after that.
Sure, go ahead.
China ended up doing some construction. It's called the Amador Convention Center. It's along the Pacific side of the Panama Canal. Now, that started under Varela, and it's founded, the monies paid for it was a loan by the Chinese government. So you imagine, while you're upset about one issue pertaining to what they're doing, somehow you still leave the door wide open, and they were able to build a convention center.
And a big one at that.
Yes.
Well, one of the biggest thing with China, and you touch on it, a very sensitive situation, but you're 100% right. They will do the job, but they'll bring their own people, and they tend to refuse to use the natives of the country. And I think the Panamanian people stood up to that and says, you know what, you brought your own people, but you need to hire some of us. It is the right thing to do. It is the proper thing to do. And China, everywhere they go, they operate in that way. They bring their own people, and they don't want to hire the native there. Did they end up hiring some of the natives of Panama, or they didn't bother doing it at all?
I will imagine they probably did hire, but again, we still don't know for what assignments. It can be very menial. It can be just a cleanup detail. I never seen any information that exclusively say that they're hiring managers in any area of the projects that they were part of. So yes, they end up with the lion's share in terms of not only building the project, providing the workforce, and now you indebted to them long-term debt. In fact, I read an article where Panama right now, in terms of the way we talk about you're qualifying for your credit in the normal sense, in the business world, they use a different scale. Right now, Panama is somewhere around 63% or more. The higher the number is, the less credibility you have for anybody to lend you money. And Panama is heading in that direction because of the tremendous outstanding debts that they have.
It's unbelievable. Like I said, the way China has advanced all over these places, obviously they have a plan. They smile a lot. but you never know what they're thinking or what they have in mind. Let's talk about a little bit about the expansion that took place in the canal in 2016. The waterway was registered nearly with 14,000 more transit that increased the canal supply when they expanded the waterway in 2016. What did that do for the canal?
What you talking about? The third lock?
Yes, the third lock.
Okay, now once they build that third lock, which now allows Panamax, the ships that are the largest ships in the world that you have now that could not fit in to transit the regular um, course of the canal. Now you have these ships that are so huge, and the cost of transiting the canal, they are paying astronomical amount of money to go through
Uh,
that area of the canal. And because of the experience that they have had with the water problem, that side of the canal, I think along the way, they built a system where the water is somewhat like you can say, like, I don't want to use the word exactly reusable, but the water is more, is processed in a way that you can recycle rather than losing all that water like it is in the other section of the canal, because that was never a concern during the construction, apparently.
well, Mr. Marshall, we've run out of time, and on behalf of the family at Grapevine, I want to take this opportunity to tell you thank you so much for being our special guest and for sharing the things that you have told us. We would like to do a part two because we have touched on so many important things, and obviously we're happy with Panama, but we want to make sure that they are protected. And I'm sure the United States of America have their eyes wide open with everything going forward. No question about it.
Could I share one little piece of information to piggyback on something you said about China intent? Uh, the
Sure, go right
United
ahead,
States
please.
sent the United States sent General Laura Richardson, female, to meet with the Panamanian government to advise them of China intent. Exactly what you were just saying. She told the panel the Beijing investment in Central and South America infrastructure, especially ports, followed a pattern that was developed in Africa. The Chinese has 29 port projects across what is known as the Command, including a major one in El Salvador. Remember, when you say the word ports, it have two purposes: a civilian purpose and it have a military value purpose, logistically. I just wanted to interject that.
Well, not only do you interject, you're right on time. Like I said before in one part of the conversation, they have built some small little military places all over. But we're going to get into that the next time we meet. Again, thank you so much for being our special guest. And you must come back on the International Grapevine to continue talking about this because we have more questions. Trust me on that. Okay?
Thank you very much for inviting me, and God bless you and family and friends.
Thank you so much. Again,
Okay.
this is William Lee saying good night for the International Grapevine and saying to you, we hope that this program has been to your liking. We touch on a lot of sensitive things. The growth of China all over Latin America, South America, Central America, and all over the place. And it's something mean that they have a plan too, but America's not sleeping. I can tell you that. Again, thank you for watching our program and good night. Hope to see you next time at the same place at the same time. Good night.